YouTube. Today we'll be reacting to Football War Mini Wars by...
You have 2 seconds to...
It is by Oversimplified. Follow them. Yep, they're gonna get a whole load of new followers here. Here we go. What the Here we go.
Quick. You have 2 seconds to name these two countries.
Wait, I'm pausing. I don't care. So north of Brazil, south of America. One of these is Mexico. I don't know if that's America. Mexico. I'm going to say, what is Colombia? What is Paraguay?
You're wrong.
Ah, damn.
Unless you got it right. Then good job. They are, of course, Honduras and El Salvador.
Crap!
One thing these two countries have in common is being fanatic about football.
You already follow them? That's one less subscribe for them then.
Or if you're a freedom-loving patriot, soccer. But do they love it so much they would go to war over it? You bet they would.
Wow.
And that is no bueno.
No bueno is no good in the language they were speaking. There it is.
If you look at these two countries, you might notice one major difference, and that is that this
the
one
size.
is a lot bigger than this one. However,
yes.
this one had a larger population than this one, made up mostly of farmers, and there wasn't enough land for them to live and work on. So they started moving from El Salvador to Honduras in search of land, and by the 1960s, a huge number of illegal immigrants had crossed over the border from El Salvador. Meanwhile, in Honduras, it's 1963, and this guy has just staged a military coup to prevent the rise of communism, and is now the military leader of the country. He immediately began harassing the peasants' unions and other left-wing groups, but he's a little insecure about the legitimacy of his leadership. So he holds an election and wins, but then the opposing party says, hey man, that election was clearly corrupt and fraudulent, and also you've been bribed by the rich American banana companies who are taking all of our bananas tax-free, and now our economy is in ruins, and everyone started to get mad at him. Now if you ever find yourself the barely legitimate military leader of a corrupt Central American country,
You kill yourself. That's what you do, you kill yourself.
you start getting into hot water, here's a bit of advice that has been tried and tested throughout the centuries. Blame something else.
Ah, my bad.
So he
Don't listen to me.
blamed the Salvadoran immigrants for stealing all the land and all the jobs and ruining Honduras. The immigrants found themselves under attack by the hostile locals. Egged on by the rich American banana companies who wanted all the bananas to themselves, the Honduran government began evicting Salvadoran immigrants who had been living on the land for generations and started sending them back to El Salvador. The Salvadoran elite were furious and protested, citing moral reasons, but in reality, they were just getting a little too crowded. So tensions were about as high as they could be, but then...
Why? Clearly this guy's a United fan. Don't listen to me. Yes. Don't listen to me. Words you should live by. You should always listen to me, unless I'm wrong. And then you shouldn't. But most of the time I'm always right. That's what I hear. But clearly this guy's a United fan, a Ronaldo fan.
It's the 1970 World Cup qualifiers, and both countries finished top of their qualifying tables, so it was now time for them to play against each other in a series of matches.
Oh dear.
The first match took place in Honduras. The night before the game, Hondurans gathered outside the Salvadoran team's hotel, making noise
This still happens to this day.
and taunting them. The next day, Honduras defeated the exhausted Salvadorans with a late 90th minute goal. After the match, a young
Which is the bigger country? I've forgotten.
Salvadoran fan, unable to bear her country's defeat, shot herself.
What?
Disturbingly, the Salvadoran government glorified the incident and
What?
made her into a national hero. And at the next game, fans brought
Filtered text. Filtered text. This is a filtered text. Do not read it. I'm going to copy and paste it a second. Okay. Here we go. Alright. Honduras is the big country. Alright.
pictures of her to the stadium.
Alright.
Emotions were running high.
I
as
see
the
now.
next match took place in El Salvador, and this time the tables were turned. The Hondurans had to endure a sleepless night in their hotel, and the next day, before the match started, instead of the Honduran flag, the Salvadorans raised a dirty rag. So great job at reducing tensions. El Salvador won decisively over the exhausted Hondurans, while spectators
So, what they're saying is, if you keep the opposition up at night, you're going to win.
battled in the stands. Team Honduras fled home in a bulletproof bus with rocks being thrown at them, and the Honduran coach reportedly told his players that they were lucky they lost. In response to the defeat, Hondurans began
Lucky they lost.
terrorizing the Salvadoran settlers even more, in some cases reportedly throwing them off their land and burning down their homes, and the immigrants began fleeing back to El Salvador. The final game in Mexico would decide who went to the World Cup. It was close, but El Salvador came out victorious, knocking Honduras out of the tournament. The
Whoa!
atmosphere is riotous.
I don't know which country we would
Literally,
root for her.
and back in Honduras, attacks on the Salvadoran immigrants further increased. This
Okay.
was too much for El Salvador to bear. With its people under attack and an unmanageable refugee crisis on its hands, El Salvador severed all diplomatic ties with Honduras and declared war.
Ooh! Whoa!
The football war is also known as the 100
What
Days
is
War
it
because
good
that's how long
for?
it lasted, making it one of the shortest wars in history.
Who won? Okay,
El
guess
Salvador
we'll find
started
out.
by carrying out air raids on strategic locations within Honduras, including
Air raids? What year was this?
International Airport, which prevented the Honduran Air Force from getting into the sky. Then, with their superior army, they began an invasion along two major roads.
How does that have? How does Salvador have a? Oh, wait, they do have more bigger population, don't they?
With light tanks and infantry. Their advance was rapid, and they were quickly approaching the Honduran capital. Then the Organization of American States met in a bit of a panic and unanimously agreed that war between El Salvador and Honduras was a bad thing and probably shouldn't continue. So they went to El Salvador and said, "Can you please stop invading?" And El Salvador declared, "Not until they stop being jerks." And so the war went on.
Day 3. They've just skipped a day here.
Honduran Air Force finally got into the sky, and with aid from neighboring Nicaragua, they successfully carried out air raids on Salvadoran air bases.
They're getting aid. Honduras is getting aid. That's not fair. I think Venezuela should help El
and oil
Salvador.
facilities, crippling the Salvadoran supply line and stopping their advance dead. Caught in a bit of a stalemate, the situation was no longer advantageous to El Salvador, so when the Organization of American States once again asked them to stop and agreed to ensure the safety of the Salvadoran immigrants, El Salvador relented, and a ceasefire was organized on the 18th of July. Then the OAS said, "Can you now please withdraw your troops from Honduras? No, please, no, please, no, please, no. Do it or we'll sanction you." You know what? Just for you, I'll do it. So El Salvador pulled its troops out of Honduras on the
They should just made the border there.
2nd of August, and with casualties in the thousands, the war was over.
Very good. The war ended. We can ignore that screen. There we go.
Economies of both nations were damaged by the war, and El Salvador didn't have the capability to take care of all the returning immigrants, a crisis that eventually helped cause a civil war. The war left behind land and border disputes, some of which are still a cause of tension to this day. El Salvador went on to play in the World Cup, but lost every match they played and didn't make it past the group stage. So in the end, nobody achieved anything, and there were no winners.
I feel like, yes, there were no winners. However, I think Salvador is the loser. But there were no winners.
Except for this guy.
Oh, guys, I'm a bit of boogie here. That was that video, guys. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, comment, share. Tell people verbally to subscribe. Check out Twitch. Check out the YouTube. You're on the YouTube. Check out the TikTok, Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, X, all the jazz. You'll find it somewhere. Thank you for watching.